I'm Adam, and this is my 818. First and foremost, what is it? It is a Factory 5 Racing 818. Essentially, it's a kit car. In Canada, we don't call it that for legal reasons, but it is essentially a kit car. It's a steel space-age frame, tubular, and then a fiberglass body over it. They come in an 818S, an 818R, and an 818C. So this is an 818S. This is their street version. There's an R, which is their race version, which has more side protection, a bigger roll bar, no windshield, just a little windscreen. And then the newer one is the Coupe, which has a fiberglass hardtop. So I've dubbed this one the 818 SRX. So it is an 818S, that's what I ordered. However, I'm using all of the R aero. I have the front splitter, the diffuser, and the rear wing. And because of my engine choice, the X kind of just rolls on there with the R. So we'll get to that in a second. Unlike most kit cars, the 818 is not a replica of anything. It's an original design from Factory 5. The 818 is derived from 818 kilograms, or 1,800 pounds, which was the design weight for the project. While I believe there are a few cars that have finished around that weight, most are closer to 1,900 to 2,000. And many finished street trims with full interiors are just north of 2,000. Still extremely light by any standards. The idea is you buy this kit, you buy a 2002 to 2007 Subaru Impreza or WRX, ideally WRX. You combine the two cars together, you take all the parts off the Subaru, combine it with the parts you're supplied with, and you got a kit. Most people find the aftermarket parts just start adding up. There's a lot of things that, wheels designed for the WRX don't always work great with this. So you end up needing a whole lot more than just a WRX. But in theory, you could just buy a WRX this kit and have something. There's a few things that set my car apart from your average 818. Most notably, looking at it, is it's wider. About 3.5 to 4 inches wider in front and rear. And that was so I could fit bigger wheels and tires. Not that the car needs bigger wheels and tires. It was just a look that I wanted that the 818 didn't have. One of my biggest gripes about the 818 is the front fender wells are too big for the size tire that they recommend. They tell you need to stay under a 24-inch diameter, and it just looks like a dinky tire in front and doesn't fill it up. So I bought a 25-inch diameter tire and decided I'm going to make it work. I had to do a few frame modifications. I can show some pictures of that later. And I also moved the tire out so it would clear at full lock. The rear I widened to match, and just because I love everything wide body, and I wanted that fender to be more like a Porsche, like say an RWB. I really like that big rounded fender, and the back I have 305s in the back, 245s in the front. So the same tires size-wise as a Porsche 911 Turbo. The other thing that really sets this car apart from any other 818 is what's under here, the heart of the beast. Now, you can't really see it too well. Unfortunately, my intake manifold is off, and I'll get into why in a minute. But buried down in here, deep and low in the center, and I'm going to see if we can get just a better view of that. Way down there is a 13B REW from a Series 7 RX-7. Now, that's not supposed to go there. So there were some discussions on the forums about what other potential engines would fit. Someone posted up, hey, what about a Rotary? I thought, well, that'd be awesome. I didn't have a good Subaru motor. The Subaru I used for parts, the motor was no good. So I did a little searching online and found some measurements, and I thought, it just might fit. So I just ordered up an engine. Um, at the time, I couldn't find any adapter plates to make that engine bolt to the Subaru transmission that I needed to use. So initially I was going to make my own. I even made a template out of wood just in order to fit the engine and see, is this going to work? Initial fitment, the twin turbos didn't quite fit, but I believe they could be made to fit if someone wanted to. One of the wastegates would have to be modified, but I'm sure that wouldn't be too hard to somehow clock the turbo, or the wastegate hits the frame. I had no intentions of keeping it twin turbo. I wanted to get rid of all that weight. I truly believe the Rotary stripped down to its bare essentials is lighter than the EJ. I don't have any proof of that yet. Now as for turbo, I went with the Borg-Warner 8374. Did my own manifold. There's an air-to-air intercooler on the side, a rather large one. You can see that buried in there. And then it's a full stainless exhaust with the cat. I figured the exhaust is only a few feet long. Let's try to keep this thing as quiet as possible. It is mated to a Subaru transmission. I did find an adapter from Volks Conversions out of Australia, and it bolted up perfectly. Slight modification for the dowel pins and the clutch, but other than that, it bolted up fine. And it all fits. The transmission sits maybe about a half an inch further back than it's supposed to in the Subaru, but with the Subaru engine, but it wasn't a problem. It does have new mounting plates for the engine. I'm using the engine mounts from the Rotary, but I had to modify. Well, I cut off the Subaru, cut off the factory 5 mounts that were designed for the Subaru engine, and built my own. They're almost the same design, just quite a bit lower, because there was a lot of room to move the Rotary down. So as I mentioned, the intake manifold is not there. I took the intake manifold off to do some wiring. Decided while I was off, I had great access, I'd do a compression test. And as I suspected, my JDM engine didn't have great compression. Turns out the rear rotor is in great shape. It's all right around 100 psi on all 3 phases. The front rotor, almost none. There's about 30 on one phase and about 10 on the others. So it's a really good sign that there's some compression on the front. Nothing has catastrophically blown. It's probably just springs. Seals just aren't sealing, everything's gotten weak. So a great candidate to rebuild. There has been catastrophic failure. And to drive it as it is, I'd risk the turbo, which initial investment costs more than the engine. So we won't do that. The plan is to rebuild it. I'm still on the fence whether or not I'm going to rebuild it myself. I've watched the videos, I've read the forums over and over. It's something I feel I can do, and I've done everything else on the car so far, so I feel like I should. However, it's one of those really unknowns for me that I would hate to mess it up and cost myself a fortune. So that's still undecided. Either way, I'll document it with pictures and hopefully some videos. It will get ported. If I'm going to rebuild it, I might as well port it. Nothing crazy, just a street port. It's already, as it is, going to make a little more power than the transmission can handle. Now, this transmission is actually out of a naturally aspirated 07 Impreza, and so is the clutch. Neither of those were ever expected to stand up to this. It's simply what I had. It came with the car that I scrapped for all the other little bits that you need from a Subaru, like steering column and steering rack and suspension components. So I had this, and I wanted to make sure everything fit and mock up. It's perfect. I have idled the engine. You may or may not have seen those videos. Didn't idle great, but it did idle, and I was able to jack it up put it in gear, clutch engage is fine, but I haven't driven it yet. So I did find another transmission to use. I have a 99 STI RA JDM transmission, one of the only 5 speeds that came with a front limited slip. In this layout, we eliminate the center differential and lock it into front wheel drive only, and then the front wheel drive differential powers the rear wheels of this car. So the RA gears are supposed to be stronger than the regular 5-speed, but it is still a Subaru 5-speed, so I'm not sure how long that'll last. I have a spec stage 3 clutch to go in there as well, so when I pull the engine to rebuild, it'll go back in with the RA transmission and the spec clutch, so that shouldn't be a problem, and time will tell if I grenade that. I'll probably grenade the axles first, just with the amount of power this thing will make simply on wastegate spring and the size tires I have, the 305 NT01s. So axles will definitely be an early upgrade. One thing I found as the build progressed, every time I would make one little change, it would snowball. For instance, I wanted to sit as low and as far back as possible. Being a tall guy, being a bigger guy, I needed to get as much leg room as possible. So I modified the gas tank and the firewall in order to get the seat back. Then I realized the way it was positioned, if you put your seat centered in the car for your side, the steering wheel was a little bit to the right, and that just bugged me too much. So I actually decided to move both seats more towards the center, so that would be centered, and as a side benefit, you'd get a little more protection for roll protection. Your corner balance would be a little better because we're just moving that mass myself closer to the center of the car. So then now my center console didn't fit, so that had to get lowered so that the seats could fit over it, and so on and so forth. With the intercooler, the Subaru engines have a top mount intercooler, which for the most part is not very effective in the 818. There are some guys running it. There's a few options. You can try fitting a larger air-to-air intercooler on top of the EJ. Some guys have put a rear mount intercooler. Factory 5 even ducked it all the way to the front of the car in their race car and are doing a front mount intercooler. The most common is a air-to-water intercooler and just running a heat exchanger in the front by the radiator. But an air-to-water intercooler adds a fair amount of weight. So I was determined I could do a side mount. Someone had already done a smaller side mount, and I thought, well, I'm widening the fender. I'm going to have a whole lot of room here. And on the Rotary, one side of the engine doesn't really get any heat. So there's nothing on this side. There's no exhaust, there's no turbo, there's nothing around this. There's no, like a normal front mount, there's no radiator to radiate heat towards it. So I put an air-to-air right on this side. I don't have a fan for it now, but there's plenty of room to put one there should I need one. Testing will tell. But because I put the intercooler here, now the fill cap for the gas tank would no longer fit. And because I had already moved where the fill location is on the gas tank when I modified the gas tank, Factory 5 put it on the back, on the bottom, so the hose connection would always be submerged under gas and be in the engine bay. I changed that so it would be on the top, then there wouldn't be any filling problems with burping, and it gets that connection out of the gas. It'll just be on the top of the tank. So because of that, now I had no way to move it back here further. I originally was going to put it here. A forum member suggested, hey, why not put it here? So there's your flush mount gas cap tucked in there. Nice little detail. Again, these things just take so much time, which is why this build just doesn't seem to end. Up front, we have an aluminum radiator. It's supposed to use the Subaru radiator. This is actually designed for a small block Ford. This is a 3-inch aluminum radiator, and I've adapted the Subaru fans to fit. Factory 5 offers a wiper kit, but it requires cutting a rather large section out of the hood to run 2 wipers. This is a single wiper mod I've done, that's well documented on the forums guys have done. I've also got the remote reservoirs. This is the nice tilting unit. Also buried under each headlight and fully ducted are two 25-row oil coolers on the front. So there's dash 10 hose running all the way from the back of the car to the front, loops around, second cooler on that side. So you might be wondering, why am I showing you my car at this stage of the build? We're not starting a new project. It's not ready to be unveiled. Well, in the past few months, as you can see, I got a TV in here. I've been watching a lot of build videos from YouTube. I've really enjoyed them. I like guys sharing their build, what they're doing, why they're doing it. You don't need to be a pro. You just need to, I guess, have the guts to dive in and try it. I really enjoyed those, and I thought maybe some people would really enjoy seeing me finish this car. Also, had I started, I guess, a vlog about this 3 years ago when I first got it, everyone would have lost interest by now. However, we are nearing the end. There's still a little bit of everything left, so I still can show. Right now I'm doing some body work, body fitment. I'm going to be pulling the motor and doing a rotary rebuild, either myself or someone else is going to do it for me. Either way, there'll be documentation. I think any more rotary rebuilds is just a good thing for YouTube, because I've already watched them all, and if there was more, I would keep watching them. Tuning. I'm using an AEM Infinity on this. I've never tuned a car in my life, and I plan to tune this one. I've got a few buddies that know a thing or two. I'm going to watch some videos online, and that could be a fun thing to document. At some point, I'll be doing a vinyl wrap. I don't plan. This isn't going to be a show car. This is a street legal track car in my mind. So we're going to be doing a vinyl wrap. Again, lots of pro videos. Just one of those things I'm going to try. And if I have any real obvious tips that maybe you don't get from a pro video that I figure out along the way, then I can share that. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be problems. We're going to figure it out. I'm going to do some carbon fiber fabrication. I've done a little bit so far. I played with widening the front splitter to match the body. All my fiberglass mods, I had never fiberglassed before buying this car. I just dove in. So there's a lot of things that I can probably share that I've learned. Again, not on a pro level, but the pros don't always share their information. So just keep in mind that pretty much everything I'm doing, I'm just a hobbyist that reads a bunch online and maybe goes to a supply store like with the fiberglass and asks a few questions and just experiments. With the exception of one time on a little vacation experience in Vegas, I've never driven a car on track. So there's going to be a big learning curve there. There's a lot of suspension things that in theory I know, and I can't wait to put to practice. So it's going to go beyond just getting the car finished. It'll never be finished, but there's going to be a whole lot of testing and tuning, which I find with a lot of the online builds, the car gets built and then it's done and you move on to the next project. I don't have that budget, so this build is going to go on for quite a while. I do have some other really neat builds in the garage that at some point when this is semi-done, I'll get to. I've got a pretty sweet rat rod and an old bike here that I plan to jump back into as soon as this is somewhat finished. So maybe I'll continue this on and share those. Can't make any promises on how often videos will come out. I do work a regular job, but not regular hours. So sometimes you'll get a bunch of videos all at once, and sometimes there'll be a dry period. Also, if all I'm doing is sanding, there's only so much I can do. I'll do one video on body work, but nobody wants to watch me sand even in a time lapse over and over again. So as I finish projects, I'll be able to show you guys more. So I guess if you want to see more, hit the like button, subscribe. If you don't, I'm not sure why you're still watching the video, but thanks for watching anyway, and move along. So, until next time, take care.